Once there lived a family not too far out from where we all lived. The Darling family. The Darling family had 3 children. Their names were Jan, Michael and Wendy. Wendy would always tell her mum how Peter Pan would always play the flute in her room. Her mother would always tell her that she was imagining things, but couldn't help but notice the leaves in the room, which always confused her a bit. Wendy would always say that the leaves fall off Peter Pan. One night, when their parents went out for the night, the kids were left home all alone, and when they got sleepy, they all went to sleep. Peter Pan silently entered their room and started looking for the leaves he had left behind. At that moment, Wendy woke up. Peter Pan, I was waiting for you. Nobody would believe that you're real. Wendy gave back the leaves she had been hiding for Peter. She really liked Peter, and so they sewed his leaves back on his clothing.
Wendy, would you like me to tell you an amazing adventure story?
I don't want to hear about an adventure. I want to live one, Peter Pan. Right at that moment, Peter's small fairy friend, Tinker Bell, entered through the window.
Well, of course. I knew you'd be here. Are you getting ready for a new adventure without me?
You know it's not possible for me to do anything without you.
Wendy woke her siblings up. The siblings looked at Peter Pan and Tinker Bell with great confusion.
Well, are you ready to fly?
Tinker Bell scattered her fairy dust and off they went floating into thin air, and all together they left the house. The kids headed towards Neverland at once. After a long journey, they arrived at Neverland, and there they were. The mermaids, wild animals, Indians, pirates, and the Lost Boys were there too. Amongst them all was the most dangerous of them, called Captain Hook. Captain Hook was Peter Pan's enemy. The reason for this was because when they were fighting, Peter cut his arm and a huge crocodile ate it. Along with his arm, he also swallowed his watch, and because of this, the crocodile would always make a tick-tock noise. And so Captain Hook would always know if the crocodile was near from the noise. When looking around with his binoculars on the deck, Captain Hook spotted Peter Pan and kids looking at him from the top of a hill. He immediately ordered the men to fire the cannons. It was very hard for Peter Pan and the kids to get away from the cannons.
Tinker Bell, you take the kids to a safe place. I will deal with Hook.
Tinker Bell was very jealous of Wendy, so she wanted to keep her away from Peter Pan. With some made-up excuse, she left Wendy back on the hill and brought Jan and Michael to a safe place down at the beach.
The Lost Boys who lived on the island saw Wendy from afar, and thinking that she was an enemy, they wounded her. At the same time, Peter Pan was fighting with Captain Hook, but seeing the crocodile that got his arm suddenly reappearing, Hook ran away in fear.
Ah!
Whilst Peter Pan was coming back, he saw Wendy lying on the rocks wounded, and he was very upset.
And the Lost Boys were very sorry when they realized that the girl that they had wounded was Peter Pan's friend.
I have left the kids in your care.
Tinker Bell was so sorry. She also realized that what she did was wrong. I am so sorry, Peter. This will never happen again, I promise. Lost Boys made a beautiful home for Wendy and her brothers. At night, they all would sleep in the house underneath the trees, listening to Wendy's stories. And Peter Pan would keep guard in front of the house. One day, when they were resting on the rocks, they spotted the pirates approaching. The pirates took the Indian chief's daughter hostage. Peter Pan and the boys went after to save the chief's daughter. And there was a big battle between them and the pirates. In the end, they saved his daughter and brought her to the chief. After that day, the Indians, Peter Pan, and the Lost Boys became very close friends. In fact, the chief ordered 2 of his best men in Peter Pan's command to guard the boys. Of course, Captain Hook was furious about this.
One day I will beat you, Peter Pan, and you will not be able to get away.
One night, when Wendy started to tell the story of her family, Peter realized how much she and her brothers missed their home. So he told them that they could go back if they wanted to, but that he wanted to stay. When they all were packing up for their long journey, they were attacked by the pirates. The pirates caught the boys after they set up a trap to the Indians and captured them. Peter Pan was sleeping at home, not knowing all that happened to the boys. Captain Hook saw him sleeping, but he could not open the door to Peter Pan's treehouse. Still, he poured the poison in the bottle he was carrying under the door, causing Peter Pan to sleep for hours. Peter Pan slept one whole day, and when he woke up, Tinkerbell entered. After she told him all that had happened, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell went out to rescue the boys. When they arrived to the Happy Rock, the pirates' headquarters, they saw that there was no pirate on guard. And when they went over to the other side of the rock, they were shocked from what they saw. Wendy, Jan, and Michael and the Lost Boys were all tied up to the poles, and Captain Hook was holding a torch in flames.
Say your last words.
As their eldest, Wendy began to talk.
Dear friends, my last words to you will be the words your real mothers would have told you. If they were here, they would have told you not to be afraid and be courageous to face your death. Don't be afraid. Kindness always wins. Always.
Captain Hook got very angry with Wendy's words, so he brought her to the boat and tied her to the big pole. At this moment, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell reached out to save the boys. At the same time, the Indians and their chief came to help. This made Peter Pan so happy, because with their help, they rescued the boys. It was now time to get Wendy. Peter Pan and the Lost Boys got on Captain Hook's ship, where only a few pirates remained. And when they realized that they would be beaten, they jumped off the ship.
There's nowhere to hide, Hook. Surrender!
Peter Pan and the Lost Boys started to charge towards Captain Hook, pushing him to walk backwards, and suddenly he heard the noise, the one noise that he was most afraid of. When Captain Hook looked back in fear, he saw the croc waiting for him to fall down into the water.
Help!
In a flash, he ran to the other side of the boat, jumped and started to swim as fast as he could. Peter Pan and the Lost Boys began to laugh. From that moment on, Hook's ship belonged to the Lost Boys and their captain was Peter Pan.
The crew is ready for your orders, Captain Peter.
Sail away!
The boys untied the ropes and the sails blew up with all their might.
Tinkerbell, fly us away to the home of the Darling family.
The kids were very happy to hear this. Wendy, Jan and Michael were going to reunite with their parents they had dearly missed. When Tinkerbell sprinkled the fairy dust, suddenly the ship was airborne and started to fly in the sky. Wendy was restless to get home and tell her parents all about Peter Pan, Tinkerbell and the Neverland. From that day on, Neverland was going to be their second home and Peter Pan their best friend. Once upon a time, there lived a doctor named Gulliver. There came a time when there was no work to be found in the city. So Gulliver found a job on a ship. This way, his new life had begun on shore. The first few days it went pretty good. He was getting used to his new life on the ship. But one day, a very strong thunder struck. After struggling in the huge waves for some hours, in the end, the ship tipped over. Gulliver and a few of the crew managed to get some rowing boats on the boat before it sank. Short while after their ship sank, it disappeared. They couldn't stay on this rowing boat for too long, and soon after a strong wave hit them, and this boat, like the ship, also tipped over. They scattered all over the place. For hours, Gulliver struggled to stay above the water. He was trying to stay alive. In the end, the current helped him manage to hit ashore. He was very tired now. He had no idea as to where he was. Besides, he was in no state to think. He fainted right there on the shore. When he woke up, he noticed he had been tied up from head to toe. Surrounding him, he saw little tiny people as small as his palm. With amazement, Gulliver was staring at these little people. And with the same reaction, the little people were staring at him. Right at that moment, Gulliver felt a tingle all over his body. When he put his head up to see what it could be, he noticed his whole body covered in tiny arrows. The very frightened little people were throwing arrows at him.
Please stop, don't. I won't hurt you, don't worry.
For a few days, they kept him there with his hands and feet tied up. They gave him food and water. After some days had passed, they tied him on a car that was pulled by hundreds of tiny little horses, taking him to their hometown. This little town was called Lilliput. They saved the largest building in the town for him. But even so, to get inside the house, he had to crawl. Seeing that Gulliver meant no harm to them, they decided to introduce him to their king. Gulliver approached Lilliput's king. The king allowed him to stay. But in order to stay, he told him that he must work and help around the city as much as he could. Gulliver signed a piece of paper that stated the do's and don'ts. For example, if he wanted to pick someone up with his hands, he needed to have permission. Under these circumstances, Gulliver began living in Lilliput. He was helping with the renovations of the buildings and carrying water to the locals. After some days had gone by, he found out a big problem amongst the little people. The neighboring country's army wanted to occupy Lilliput. In order to do so, they were getting ready for war. Gulliver went over to the king and proposed to help.
If you like, I can help you out, Your Highness.
The king was happy. He first thanked him, then accepted his offer. At that time, the neighboring countries' ships had finished their preparations. They were waiting for their order to proceed. This news got all the town worried. On the other hand, for Gulliver, it was too easy. He asked everyone to find as much wire as they could and bring it to him. Gulliver joined all the wire they brought to him and made a very long and strong piece of string. When it was midnight, he got the long string of wire and crossed to the other side of shore. Without being seen to the enemy, he managed to get to the port on the other side. He tied all the ships to one another, and with the very few soldiers that were inside, he pulled them to Lilliput's shore. The people waiting for him at the port were super happy. They had imprisoned the enemy's soldiers. They now had no reason to be scared of the enemy. The king thanked Gulliver and rewarded him. Gulliver was very happy he had gained the king's trust. A while later, there was a fire in the castle. The moment he heard about the fire, Gulliver took one of the ships in the harbour, filled it with water, and poured it on the castle, putting off the fire immediately. Gulliver and the king were getting along very well. Before making a decision, the king was always asking Gulliver first. Of course, this started to get in the way of the other advisors to the king. They were envious of Gulliver.
Your Highness, we hear rumors. Gulliver is planning to get stronger and take your position as the king of Lilliput.
Really?
Yes, my king. We all know how strong he is. We can't defend ourselves if he attacks us.
We can't live in fear like this. Public is also on its toes.
The king was well affected by his advisors, and he decided to punish Gulliver.
Considering the good he's done before, I won't give him the death penalty. His eyes will be blinded, he will be forbidden to go into town, and his food will be limited.
When he heard about the king's decision, one of the workers in the castle who loved Gulliver ran right next to Gulliver to tell him all about it.
I can talk to the king and change his mind.
But the decision was made, and the king had no intentions to change his mind. Gulliver finally understood that his only option was to leave. At night, taking the enemy ships in the harbour with him, he began to move towards the island across. He walked and swam and finally came to the island of what people called the enemy. When Gulliver returned their ships, they understood that he didn't have bad intentions. With the guide next to him, they sent Gulliver to meet with the king. The king properly welcomed Gulliver, and Gulliver told him all that had happened. The king told him that he could stay as long as he wanted. Gulliver was really surprised of this kind gesture after he stole their ships, because he hadn't seen this kind of behaviour in Lilliput. Gulliver was staying out at night, since there was no house big enough for him.
People of Lilliput think this kingdom is the enemy, but actually they're all good people.
One day, when he was walking about, he found a rowing boat. This was clearly the boat that they were on after his ship had sunk.
Apparently our boat hit the shore on this island.
He immediately went to the king. The king gave him all the men he needed. They all began to repair the boat. In a few days, the boat was ready for shore. Gulliver was very happy because he could leave the kingdom of the little people and go home. He thanked the king and his people who welcomed him. But a tough journey was waiting for him on this small boat in the big ocean.
Even the smallest storm will sink my boat.
After a couple of days on the ocean, he came across a ship. He began yelling for help.
Hey! Here! Help me!
Finally, they heard him. They came next to the rowing boat and took Gulliver on their ship. And so Gulliver was safe. He was anxious to tell about all that had happened. The little people, the kingdom of Lilliput, and the kings of the two kingdoms. He wondered who would believe him about all that had happened. Gulliver felt very happy that he was going to go home to see his family. But he also felt there were many more adventures waiting for him out there in the big ocean. Once upon a time, there lived a little girl. This girl wore a Red Riding Hood at all times. That's why everybody used to call her Little Red Riding Hood. Darling!
Yes, Mummy?
You know your grandmother is ill. Would you take her the cookies I baked and the fresh herbs I picked from the woods?
Of course, Mummy, I will.
The little girl, with her Red Riding Hood as always, started her journey to her grandmother's house. "Do not leave the road in the bunny forest, sweetheart," said her mother as she was leaving. Little Red Riding Hood started walking in the forest while joyously singing songs.
I wonder why they call it the bunny forest. I haven't seen any bunnies along the way.
Little Red Riding Hood came to a road filled with flowers. There were all kinds of colored flowers.
I should pick some flowers for my grandmother. She'll be very pleased.
While Little Red Riding Hood was picking the flowers, she did not realize that she was drifting away from her path. At that moment, she heard a sound coming from the bushes. Suddenly, a big bad wolf approached in front of her. Little Red Riding Hood was so scared that when she saw the wolf right in front of her eyes, she dropped the basket that she was carrying. The wolf jumped closer to her and collected the cookies she had dropped from the basket and gave them back to Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood was amazed by this unexpected gesture from the wolf.
Thank you.
Where are you heading, little girl?
To my grandmother's house, the yellow house at the end of this forest. She is not feeling well, so I'm bringing her cookies and healthy herbs.
Really?
By the way, you can call me Little Red Riding Hood like everybody else does.
I'll head on first and let your grandmother know that you're on your way so that you can continue picking up your beautiful flowers.
Right at that moment, he heard a gunshot of an approaching hunter's rifle and ran away as fast as he could. Little Red Riding Hood looked around for a moment and started crying, realizing that she was lost. Hearing her crying, the hunter approached and came next to her.
What are you doing alone here, little girl? It's very dangerous around here. I'm looking for a big bad wolf whom I've been hunting for a very long time.
Little Red Riding Hood was very ashamed because she had not listened to her mother and left the road in the bunny forest. So she could not tell the hunter that she had met the wolf.
Well, I was bringing cookies to my ill grandmother living at the end of the forest and I got lost.
Let me bring you to your grandma's home then.
They started to walk together, and right then the wolf took a shortcut and quickly made it to the grandmother's house. He knocked on the door. The grandmother yelled from inside,
Who is it?
the wolf changing his voice.
It's me, Grandma. Little Red Riding Hood. I brought you cookies and fresh herbs from the woods.
The door is open, my dear. You can come in. The wolf smirked and stormed in through the open door. When a while later, Little Red Riding Hood and the hunter arrived at the grandmother's house.
Go, little girl. Go next to your grandmother as soon as possible.
The hunter went back on his way. Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. Her grandmother yelled from inside.
Who is it?
It's me, Grandma, Little Red Riding Hood.
The door is open, my darling. You can come in.
Little Red Riding Hood hesitated for a moment, because the sound she heard did sound a little different than her grandmother. She then remembered that her grandmother was ill.
But Grandmother probably sounds like that because she is ill.
Little Red Riding Hood opened the door and went in. The wolf, dressed in grandmother's clothing, with her nightcap and her glasses, was lying in the bed. He also closed the drapes so that it became dark inside, and Little Red Riding Hood could not recognize him.
I thank you, darling, for all your trouble getting all the way here to bring me food. Come next to me so I can give you a hug. Come, my darling. Come closer.
Little Red Riding Hood left the basket on the floor, but she did not get too close to the bed, because her grandma looked different.
Why are your arms so long, Grandma?
So that I can hug you better.
Why are your ears so big?
So that I can hear you better.
But why are your eyes so huge?
So that I can see you better.
Why are your teeth so sharp, Grandmother?
So that I can eat you better.
The wolf jumped out of the bed and charged at the Little Red Riding Hood. At that moment, Little Red Riding Hood realized that it wasn't her grandmother lying in the bed, but instead the big bad wolf she had ran into along the way.
Help me!
The hunter heard Little Red Riding Hood scream.
Help! Help me!
And ran straight to the house, stormed into the open door and caught the wolf immediately.
I finally got you, big bad wolf. Now you're in my hands.
The hunter cut the wolf's belly and rescued the grandmother.
Thank you for saving us, Mr. Hunter.
You're welcome. But promise me, little girl, that you will never forget what your mother asks of you.
With great appetite, Grandmother ate all the cookies Little Red Riding Hood had brought for her, boiled the healthy herbs to make a cup of tea, and instantly got well. Little Red Riding Hood promised her grandmother that she will never ever fall into the words of a bad wolf again. Little Red Riding Hood was walking in the forest once again, singing along merrily, as she ran into the same wolf again. The wolf was punished by the hunter to clean the forest, and he was very ashamed about what he did when he saw the Little Red Riding Hood. The bunny forest became full of joy, bunnies and flowers like it was once before. Once upon a time, there was a poor widow who lived with her son. Her son Jack did not work because he was a very lazy young man. That was why they almost had no money.
Mom, is there anything to eat? I'm hungry.
Each passing day, they had become poorer and poorer, until they had come to a point where they had to sell their cow, Milkwhite, because they could no longer feed her. Jack's mother told him to bring the cow to the marketplace and sell it for the best price he could get. Maybe then they could buy some food to eat. On his way to the market, Jack came across a somewhat weird-looking old man. The old man had a look at the cow and turned to Jack and said,
Hi, my boy. If you give me this cow, I will give you very valuable things in return.
Jack was very happy to hear this. The old man took out 5 beans from his pocket.
Beans? But these are magic beans.
Jack, of course, did not believe him at first. But the old man insisted.
Look, young man, you seem like a good and bright kid. Take these magic beans. You won't regret it. Trust me.
Jack believed the old man and gave him Milkwhite in return for the magic beans. Happy with the exchange he had made, Jack ran home.
Ma, look what I've got!
Seeing Jack running to her so excited, his mother thought that he had sold the cow for a lot of money. But then when Jack showed her the magic beans, his mum was pretty cross. She threw the magic beans into the garden and sent Jack to his room. You are grounded in your room until I tell you to come out, and no dinner for you tonight. In the morning, Jack looked out the window, and he could not believe his eyes. From his bedroom window, he could see a stalk growing up really fast. This was neither a tree or a giant flower. This was a magic beanstalk. Jack jumped on the giant beanstalk from his window. Using the leaves and the twisty vines like the rungs of a ladder, he started to climb up the beanstalk. After a while, he found himself in a weird place where everything was much bigger than normal. He saw a path full of flowers and a very big house at the end of it. Jack came to the house and knocked on the door. A lady giant answered.
Well, I was going to ask if you had something to eat.
Yes, I do, but you must disappear before my husband gets back, because he loves the taste of young children and so he eats them up.
Jack, of course, was a bit frightened, but also he was very hungry. Just as he was sitting at the table to have a bite, he heard someone talking outside with a deep voice.
Fee, fo, foes, I smell a child with my nose. Raw or cooked, I don't mind. I can't get enough of those.
The woman called out to Jack.
Hide in the oven right this moment, my child.
Jack hid in the oven at once. The giant went into the kitchen and started to sniff around.
I can smell children.
What are you talking about, dear? You're probably smelling the meat I've given the cats yesterday.
After he had finished his dinner, the giant started to count his gold. After a short while, he was tired from counting the gold, and so he fell asleep. Jack came out of the oven and took a bag of gold. He threw the bag right under his magic beanstalk Then off he went down, holding onto the beanstalk. He found the bag of gold he threw down and ran home right away. When Jack's mother saw the gold, she was very happy. From that day on, there would be no more poverty or hunger for them. But after a few months had passed by, all the gold they had finished. With no other option, Jack climbed up the beanstalk and went to the house of the giants. The giant's wife was somewhat a little suspicious of him this time.
Last time you were here, we lost a bag of gold.
But still she pitied the young boy and invited him in. Not long after, the giant came home.
Fee, fo, foes, I smell a child with my nose. Raw or cooked, I don't mind. I can't get enough of those.
Hearing the giant's song, Jack jumped into the oven once again. After finishing his dinner, the giant asked his wife to bring his chicken. When his wife brought the chicken, he ordered the chicken to lay an egg. Leaving Jack fully surprised, the chicken laid a golden egg. And when the giant went to his room to rest, Jack came out of the oven and took the chicken and rushed down the beanstalk. Thanks to the golden egg, Jack and his mother were rich once again. But after some time had passed, Jack decided to try his luck once again and started to climb up the magic beanstalk. This time he went into the house without being seen by the wife and hid in a big copper pot. Sometime later the giant came home.
Fee, fo, foes. I smell a child with my nose. Raw or cooked, I don't mind. I can't get enough of those.
This time the giant's wife decided she wanted Jack caught.
If there is a child around here, then it should be in the oven.
Of course, Jack had hid somewhere else this time. The giant and his wife were determined to find the child, but although they searched everywhere in the house, they just could not find him. After their dinner, the giant put a golden harp on the table, and so he ordered play. Playing lullabies, the harp put the giant to sleep. At that moment, Jack knew that he wanted this harp more than anything else in the world. In order to do so, he climbed up the sleeping giant's knee, jumped on the table, and to the harp. But something really unexpected happened. Help! The harp yelled. Jack jumped down the table with the harp on his back. The giant woke up and started to run after him. Jack started to slide down the beanstalk as fast as he could, and the giant followed. When he reached home, Jack called to his mother.
Mom, quick, bring me an axe.
They both started to cut down the beanstalk. And finally, the beanstalk, and of course the giant, found down on the ground with a big noise. They were safe from the giant.
Oh God, we're safe.
They were safe all right, but Jack was very regretful of all the things he had done. He almost lost his life because of his greed. He promised his mother that he would never ever steal from anyone again and that he would work really hard from now on. From that day on, Jack and his mother were never poor again. Yes, they did have the golden egg-laying chicken to help. But Jack also never stopped working ever again. On a sunny day, Alice and her sister went out for a walk on the fields. Alice's sister was reading a book. Because of this, Alice got very bored. Right when she was thinking what she could do for fun, a white bunny passed by. The bunny was talking to himself. Alice was stunned because she had never seen a talking bunny before. The bunny took out a pocket watch and then...
Oh no, I'm going to be so late.
He said in a hurry. Alice was very impressed with what she saw. So curious to see what was going on, she went after the bunny. The bunny went through a hole in a tree trunk, and Alice followed him through the same hole. Suddenly, she found herself falling down in a well. The well was very deep, and Alice kept on falling down slowly. While going down, the little girl saw pictures, little wardrobes and shelves. Alice felt like she was going around the world. And finally, she fell on a soft surface. She had a long corridor in front of her. Alice got up and started to walk. She saw many locked doors along the corridor, and the bunny disappeared. Alice feared that she would not be able to get out of there. Right at that moment, she saw a little golden key on a 3-legged small table next to her. She took the key and tried to open all the locked doors, but the key was too small for the doors. Looking around sadly, Alice realized that there was another small door behind the curtain. When she put the key in the lock, the door opened immediately. Alice was very happy when the door opened. Behind the door, there was a very beautiful garden. But because she could not fit through the door, Alice could not go out. When she returned to the table inside, she noticed a bottle with a label saying, "Drink me" on it. Alice took the bottle and started drinking. As she drank the potion, she began to shrink. When she got small enough, she thought she could fit through the door. But when she got back to the key, she realized that she had gotten too small to reach the table. She started to cry. At that moment, she saw a cake on the floor. The cake had a label saying, "Eat me." With curiosity, Alice took a bite from the cake. At that moment, she started to grow again. Now she could get the key, but was too big to go through the door. Alice was too tired. With no hope, she started to cry again. The tears running from her eyes started to form a big puddle that reached the end of the corridor. Suddenly, the white bunny passed her in a hurry. Alice called out, Sir, please, hold on a minute, help me!" The bunny got away fast, without even looking at Alice. But while running, he dropped his gloves and hand fan. Alice took his stuff from the floor, and when she started to fan herself, she started to shrink again. Right at that moment, she slipped and fell into the puddle. Alice and lots of different animals swimming in the water started to drift towards the shore. When they reached the shore, they were all wet, and Alice saw the bunny again. This time the bunny thought she was his maid and asked her to bring his gloves and hand fan from his house. Alice went to the bunny's house in the forest. When she entered, she immediately found his gloves and hand fan, but right there she saw another bottle on the table. She reached to the bottle and thought, "If I drink this, maybe I can go back to my normal size. She took the bottle and drank the whole potion. Instead, she became so huge she could not even move in the house.
What am I going to do now? How will I get out of here?
In the meantime, the bunny was waiting for Alice impatiently. Fearing from Alice, the animals started to throw rocks into the house, breaking windows. The stones landing next to Alice started to turn into small cakes. When Alice started to eat these cakes, she started to shrink again and managed to go out of the house. But this time, unfortunately, she got too small. Poor Alice got so tiny she was lost between the little bushes in the woods. She started to think about what she can do to get back to her normal size. At that moment, she saw a puppy a little further away. When she called the puppy over to pat, she realized how much smaller she was next to the dog. She almost got squashed by the puppy's paws. When she was running, she stumbled over a mushroom. There was a blue caterpillar on the mushroom. She asked the caterpillar what she can do to get back to her normal size. The caterpillar answered with a wise manner.
One side of the mushroom I am standing on will make you grow. On the other side will make you shrink.
Alice took a small piece from the mushroom and put it in her mouth. Right at that moment, she had gotten so big that she could not even see her feet. To shrink back to her normal size, this time she took a piece from the other side. By eating different amounts from both sides of the mushroom, she managed to come back to her normal size. She took 2 pieces from each side and held them in her hand. While she was walking, she came across a tiny house. But to be able to get in, she had to shrink again. Eating the mushroom pieces, she started to shrink again. When she entered the house, Alice found herself in a kitchen. Right in the middle of the kitchen, there was a duchess standing with a baby in her arms. And on the floor, a fat cat was looking at Alice, smiling. It was the first time Alice saw a smiling cat. So she asked, curiously,
Why does your cat smile like that?
"Because this is a Cheshire cat," said the Duchess. At the same time, the cat became invisible and the baby in the Duchess' arms started to cry. The Duchess passed the baby over to Alice. "You rock the baby and stop her crying. I will go and play croquet with the Queen." Alice took the baby and started to rock. Suddenly, the Cheshire Cat appeared again, and smiling again, he talked to Alice.
You need to find the Mad Hatter and the March Hare. But be careful, they're both crazy.
Right after their little chat, the Cheshire Cat disappeared again. Alice angrily yelled at the cat.
Stop disappearing and reappearing again! You're freaking me out!
Cheshire Cat appeared once again, smiling.
Okay, then I will disappear slowly.
Starting from his tail, Cheshire Cat started to disappear again. Only his face remained. Alice went out of the house, and in a short while she found the March Hare's house. March Hare was having tea with the Mad Hatter under a tree. March Hare put some hay between his ears. Alice could not understand why he put hay between his ears. And the Mad Hatter had a hat on his head. The mouse between them had rested his head on the table sleeping. And they both had their arms on the mouse, using him as a pillow. When they saw Alice coming, they opposed, saying that there was no space available.
No, there's plenty of room,
said Alice. Mad Hatter asked Alice.
Why do you think the crow looks like a desk?
Why do you think?
I don't know.
Alice got really bored of these stupid and rude jokes of the Mad Hatter and March Hare. She said, "This was the stupidest meeting I have been to," and went away. Alice noticed a door in the trunk of a tree. When she entered, she found a golden key. The golden key opened the door to a beautiful garden. Entering the garden, Alice was very surprised. The gardeners of the Queen of the Hearts were painting all the white roses to red, and all the men looked like playing cards. So Alice asked, "I'm curious, why are you painting all the white roses red?" So the gardener answered,
The Queen wanted red roses, but we accidentally grew white roses. If the Queen finds out, she will chop our heads off.
Right at that moment, the Queen of Hearts came to the garden. The soldiers next to her were all in the shape of playing cards. Queen of Hearts invited this strange girl she saw for the first time to play croquet. Alice never saw a croquet field like this one before. Hedgehogs were balls and flamingos were the croquet mallets. In the middle of the game, the players started to fight and throw hedgehogs at each other. The Queen was very upset with this situation. She suddenly stomped her foot on the floor and yelled with anger, "Chop off the heads of all the players who fight!" The Queen of Hearts was so angry, she cancelled the croquet party. And suddenly, there was a loud voice.
The trial has begun!
Everybody started to run towards the court. A trial was going to be held for Jack of Hearts, who supposedly had stolen a pie from the Queen's kitchen. The Queen could not catch the Jack of Hearts during this incident, therefore she could not punish him. The Jack of Hearts was held in prison during his trial. The White Rabbit started to read from the roll of paper he was holding.
On a beautiful summer day, our Queen of Hearts had baked delicious pies, and Jack of Hearts had stolen them.
The king yelled from his seat.
Call the first witness.
The first witness was the Mad Hatter. When the Mad Hatter started to talk on the witness stand in front of the king, Alice suddenly started to grow. The White Rabbit announced that it was time for Alice to take the witness stand. Hearing her name being called, Alice immediately stood up. Forgetting how big she grew, when her dress tangled on the jury stand, she turned the stand upside down, making all the members of the jury fall on the floor. The Queen asked Alice to tell everything she knows. "I don't know anything," Alice answered. The Queen yelled furiously, "You don't? Chop her head off too!" And Alice answered bravely, "I don't care about your orders. You are not my queen, and so you can't do anything to me." As soon as Alice said these words, the king, queen, and all the playing cards started to fly towards Alice. Screaming away, Alice tried to catch them. All the commotion became a big whirlpool of cards around Alice, sucking her inside and flying her up. And finally, with the leaves flying all around her, she found herself on the field again. Her sister called out, "Alice, come on now, wake up!" When Alice woke up, she realized that everything was a dream. Oh, wow! It was all a dream, and what an amazing dream it was! Hey, sis, let me tell you about my dream. You know, a white rabbit... Once upon a time, there lived a little girl named Dorothy. Dorothy lived in a farmhouse with her auntie and uncle, Em and Henry. On that day, Dorothy didn't even want to play with her dog. It was as if she felt something bad was going to happen.
A hurricane is coming our way. We must hide in the basement.
And so Auntie Em yelled out, "Come here this instant, Dorothy."
Geppetto, come here. We must go down to the basement.
Dorothy had to go under the bed to get her dog. Right at that moment, the farmhouse began to shake severely. Then the farmhouse began to spin around in its spot. The little girl was trying to hold on to something, and at the same time she was trying to catch her dog. And she was about to fly out of the door. She managed to catch her dog. She wasn't able to see nothing, just the skies and clouds. Right at that moment, she knew she was way up into the sky. The house and her head were spinning so fast that she was so sleepy, she was numb to all that was happening around her. And so she fell asleep. Dorothy woke up with a big bang. The bed jumped up so high that it made the little girl fall out of the bed and onto the ground. She then realized that the farmhouse wasn't turning anymore. The sun was shining through the window, which made her realize she was on land. She ran outside. She couldn't believe the scenery. Her jaw dropped. There were fields of flowers as far as the eye could see. Then suddenly, Dorothy saw little men running towards her. The men had cone-shaped hats, and the little bells on top of their hats were ringing. Also, their uniforms were blue, and they all had very long beards. When the little men came next to Dorothy, there appeared a tiny lady with a white dress.
The mightiest magician, welcome. I'm the good-hearted witch of the north, and these are my friends, the dwarfs. I want to thank you for getting rid of the wicked witch of the east and saving us. Thank you, but you must have confused me with somebody else.
The good-hearted witch from the north marked a spot for Dorothy on the farmhouse. On the ground were a pair of shiny silver-shoed legs. Dorothy realized that the farmhouse landed on the wicked witch.
I didn't mean to do it. It really wasn't my fault. What will I do now?
Only thing you can do is just accept the silver magic shoes of the wicked witch as a gift. Dorothy took her old shoes off and wore the new ones.
Will you help me return back home?
There's only one person who can help you, and that is the Wizard of Oz. By following the yellow brick road, you will arrive at Emerald City, and once you arrive, you will have to get permission to go up and see the Wizard of Oz. Straight after talking to Dorothy, the good-hearted witch disappeared. The dwarfs sent Dorothy off and went on their way. After some time had passed away, the little girl and her dog needed to rest, so they stopped by a cornfield. In the middle of the field, Dorothy noticed a scarecrow. With great curiosity, she went next to him.
Hi, who are you?
At first, Dorothy was shocked, but then began explaining all that had happened.
I don't know anything. My head is full of hay. I wonder if I come to Emerald City with you, do you think the Wizard of Oz would give me a brain?
Dorothy took the scarecrow down from its frame, and together they began to walk on the yellow brick road. A few hours later, as they passed through the forest and amongst the trees, they saw something shining. Once they had arrived next to it, they realized it was a man made out of tin. The Tin Man was standing still.
Please help me. Because I have rusted, I have not been able to make a simple move for a very long time.
How can we help you?
Over there, you can find my shack. Please go over there and get my oil tin and rub it on my joints.
Dorothy did as the Tin Man told her to do. She poured oil on all his joints, and he began to move again.
Thank you so much. And what are you guys doing here?
Dorothy began to explain what had happened all over again.
Do you think you could give me a heart?
And so the Tin Man followed them. The forest began to get dark. And suddenly they heard a horrific roar, and out jumped out a lion in front of them. But when Toto began to bark, the lion took a step back in fear and began to shiver.
How can a big lion like you be afraid of such a small dog?
I know, I'm a coward. Even the slightest noise can scare me.
Wait, don't cry. Tell you what, we're looking for the Wizard of Oz. We all will ask for something from him. Maybe he can give you courage.
The lion wiped away his tears and joyfully agreed to go to Emerald City with them. They walked for a while. The Scarecrow showed them the sky shining green. The Emerald City wasn't so far now. Soon later, after a couple of hours of walking, they had reached the gates of the Emerald City.
We have come here to see the Wizard of Oz.
To enter the castle, they had to wear giant glasses because they could be blinded by the Emerald City's shiny green lights. The houses, streets, even the clothes of the people were all green in the Emerald City. Everywhere was shimmering. Finally, they had reached the castle. To see the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy was the first one to enter. The little girl entered hesitating, and she saw a big head hanging from the ceiling above the throne.
I am the mighty and scary Oz. And who are you? Why did you want to see me? And where did you find those silver shoes?
My name is Dorothy. I have come to ask for help.
Dorothy told everything that had happened to mighty Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz said that he would help her, but in return, she had to get rid of the Wicked Witch of the West. With great frustration, Dorothy returned to her friends crying, and she told them what the Wizard of Oz had asked of her. They all decided to find the Wicked Witch of the West and get rid of her. The next morning, they left the Emerald City and started their journey to the castle of the Wicked Witch of the West. The Wicked Witch of the West had only one eye, but she could see really far. When she saw that Dorothy and her friends were approaching her castle, she called out her giant bees.
Sting these intruders!
Dorothy and her friends saw the bees flying towards them. They did not have time to run away.
Scarecrow, cover Dorothy, Toto and the lion with your hay so that the bees cannot sting them.
When the Scarecrow covered the others with his hay, the bees all tried to sting the Tin Man. But of course, all lost their stings, and one by one they fell on the ground. This time, the witch sent her flying monkeys to hunt Dorothy and her friends. And so, the flying monkeys attacked Dorothy and her friends. One of them caught the Scarecrow and threw him on a tree. Another one threw the Tin Man over a cliff. They also tied up the lion to bring to the witch. Afterwards, all the flying monkeys turned to Dorothy. But once they saw the silver shoes on her feet, they did not want to hurt her. They just took her to the castle. When the Wicked Witch of the West saw the silver shoes on Dorothy's feet, she got really scared. But she also realized that Dorothy was not aware of the power of her shoes.
Give those shoes to me. No, I won't. I said give it!
The witch made a move towards Dorothy.
How did you know that water is the only thing that can destroy me? Oh, I am so sorry.
As she screamed, the witch melted away. Only her clothes remained on the floor. Dorothy first saved the lion from the cage he was kept. Then they together found Scarecrow and the Tin Man. They went back to the Emerald City, told them that they got rid of the evil Wicked Witch of the West, and wanted to see the Wizard of Oz. The mighty Wizard of Oz welcomed them all together this time. When they entered the throne room, they heard the deafening loud sound.
I am the mighty Wizard of Oz. Why are you looking for me?
Toto got so scared that he ran over the big separating screen in the corner. Behind the screen appeared a tiny, bold, old man. He was holding something resembling a horn in his hands.
And who might you be?
I'm the mighty Wizard of Oz.
Are you the Wizard of Oz? But how can that be?
The old man decided to explain his story. In reality, he was working in a circus. He used to make shows with the hot air balloon. One day, when a strong wind blew him to this castle, the people of the Emerald City thought that he was the wizard coming from the skies. And they asked him to rule the city, and so he agreed.
And what about all your promises?
The wizard told the Tin Man that he could give him a heart this instant. He reached behind and took out a stuffed heart toy from the chest. The Tin Man felt much better. Then he returned to the Scarecrow. He opened the stitches on his head and put in a handful of wheat and sewed it back up again. It was the Scary Lion's turn. He poured some potion from a gold bottle in a bowl and asked the lion to drink this potion of courage. The lion drank the potion. Suddenly, he left this weak, scared look and roared like the big, mighty lion he was. The Wizard of Oz smiled at them. He hadn't actually given them anything. All the things they had asked him, they had already had inside of them, but they did not know how to use it.
Now it's your turn, Dorothy. You actually had everything you wished for right there with you all this time. If you tap your silver shoes to each other for 3 times, you will go wherever you wish for.
So I could actually go home whenever I wanted?
Yeah, but then I would be stuck on that field forever.
And I was going to rust all by myself.
And I would never become a courageous lion.
Dorothy tightly hugged her friends. She said her farewells to each of them. Then she held Toto, and tapping her shoes 3 times, she said she wanted to go home next to her uncle and her aunt. After a short while, she found herself sitting in the garden. Excited, she looked around. She saw her uncle and her aunt running towards her. She laughed with joy.
Toto, look! We are home!